Amazing. So my name is Jessie, and today we're going to be interviewing Mr. Deepak himself. Deepak, for everyone out there, just tell us what you do. Just a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. I really hate the word entrepreneur. I hate it, like I really do. I think I'm a little bit more akin to kind of, I take a very, I enjoy business. I enjoy sport. I've got a very kind of Del Boy and Rodney approach to business in that I'm like, okay, cool. I want to get this done. What is the best way to get it done? What is the best win-win situation for everybody? Case in point, how we met each other, because I was struggling really to find someone to help me grow my brand and correspondingly grow their brand. And then a friend of mine was like, dude, why don't you fucking just look at Star now? There's people that are looking to grow their brand name. They're already in the space. They've already had some training. Because I was like putting job ads up and you just get people that don't have the background. Anyway, I run a digital marketing agency. It's called Pearl Lemon. And that's what I do. We specialize in SEO and lead generation. Yeah.
So what value do you bring? So everyone says SEO, lead generation. It's like kind of the buzzwords at the moment for the world that we work in. But what exactly does that do?
Yeah, absolutely. So my focus is on the commercial goals of a client. So SEO in of itself, it's ranking on Google, right? Ranking on Google has it's a double-edged sword in that everybody fundamentally understands what that principle means. No one really, or everybody has a different theory as to the best ways to do it. And the trust factors around it need to be high because there's a lot of people that will sell it, and it'll either be an outsourced outfit that perhaps will send you a bad email. You probably get them if you're a business only listening. Hey, I can fix this, I can fix your SEO, guarantee Google page one rankings. And then there's also, of course, a huge risk, right? It's very different from, you put £5 into an advert, you see the click-throughs, you see the impressions, you see where your money's gone. It's not the same with SEO, right? You're ultimately taking a punt, right? You're like, right, I'm going to potentially spend 500 quid or 5 grand or 50 grand, and I need to wait for the result. So that is the part that a lot of that's always the challenging part when for example, the sales process. How can I establish my value on the basis of something or a result that you might not see for 3 months down the line? I didn't answer your question though, saying what makes me different at all, did I? Fuck.
That's my third question. You've lined me up perfectly. Don't worry.
So now that we've established I'm terrible at answering actual questions, yeah, no, I guess my USP really is understanding perhaps the commercials behind what we're actually trying to do. Like, it's not, no one hires someone to run a Facebook ad or to rank you on Google. It's like, I want you to help fix my problems and I want you to help to make my company grow. And that's really the key thing. And it's about understanding whether what I do as a core skill set can help you with your problems. And that's really what I care about. It's like, well, how does your company make money? What have you done to establish your brand? How can we attach what I do as a core principle to your goals? And if there's an alignment, then then it will make sense. If there's not an alignment, and if you're trying to compete against, for example, Amazon, and you're like a small toy retailer and you're like, I need to do SEO and to compete against Amazon, I'm going to be like, buddy, I'm probably not qualified to compete. I'm not qualified to compete against Amazon, and you're not going to have the money to spend, and I wouldn't even know what to charge you because I got no sense of what's required. So with someone like that, I'd say you need an alternative strategy. SEO is maybe going to be challenging without doing some actual research. So it's about finding some of those alignments and understanding. Whereas if you're a manufacturer and you've got these really weird metal parts that you sell that you would never perhaps run a Google AdWords campaign for because it has a very specific search volume, then doing SEO will make sense, because I'll be like, these are the specific products these guys are searching for. It's a specific product part. There's maybe only 6 manufacturers. We want to outrank these manufacturers because we're specialists. Then SEO makes a lot more sense than running AdWords, because you're like, well, you're not going to blow 500 quid each month to sell a £40 product, but if you can get the return over the long term, then it really makes sense. And if you times that singular product by, we're a specialist supplier, we've got 110 products, then SEO makes a lot more sense than anything else. So it's also about kind of understanding some of those alignments and where it makes sense and where it does not.
So, let's say I was this manufacturer of small parts, and I'm like, okay, I want to get started. What would I have to do? What are the first three things I need to do to actually start the whole process?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I'd say, look, if everybody should do some bits themselves, right? Number one, I'd say simple things. If you're coming to me as a manufacturer, you probably have already got a website, right? You may have probably already some level of e-commerce set up. So one simple thing is when your development team are building your website, depending upon how it's done, make sure the page load is like super fast. So tell them to do what's necessary to make sure that things are loading within 3 seconds.
How could I do that though? So, how would I be able to do that?
No, absolutely. So if you're going to do the implementation yourself, then we're talking about a slightly different thing because it involves there's a core technical element to it. But one of the things are that I'd say when you're deciding upon your server, make sure it's a server that's potentially don't use shared servers always. For example, pay for the premium server depending upon how fast you want your pages to load. Number two is using, or when you decide upon a technology, right? Some people, for example, come to me and they have e-commerce sites that are set up on really funky page builds and focus on platforms that anybody could plug into. So WordPress, for example, is a great example of something that you could find many a developer for. Another example, of course, is Shopify, right? WooCommerce is another one. But sometimes when you get specialist suppliers, it's always a bad idea because you're going to get into trouble down the line when you need to plug someone else in and they're going to be like, hey, buddy, I've never seen this fucking CMS in my life. So that's a secondary thing that's always useful. And then a third, like practical, what can I actually do, Deepak, to kind of answer your question? Naming conventions. Like everybody, so you've got like several layers to it, right? You've got your page URL, which is, Jessie's parts /irons/clothes iron, right? Let's just talk about that, right? I've got an iron specifically for clothes and I've got an iron for, I don't know, my fabrics, my curtains, my textiles, or whatever it might be. So think about the naming convention, which everybody already does, probably at URL. You're telling me something I already know, Deepak, but everybody fucking forgets or gets lazy to do it when they do it with their images and when they do it with their metadata. So there's those three layers, and the metadata, or the meta text rather, is that stuff when you search something, it will be the stuff that comes up below, like the meta description. Sorry, the below. So set up a process in place. So do it yourself once, but record a fucking video, and then pass off that process. Pass off that process and explain your thinking behind, and think about, well, what is it that I want someone to see or read when I look at that? What is it the image should say such that when people search and images come up, they find my images, and then record a 15-minute video of that process and then pass the process off internally, because these are things that can be done internally that half the time don't get done, especially as an e-commerce business scales. You've got 100 products, do that process up front, because I'm going to charge you otherwise for having 100 badly named products, which is going to be a nightmare for me to go in and fix. So I'd say that would be something practical that you can make sure either you do or that you make your development team or whoever starts doing your naming stuff to be aware of.
Interesting. That's really interesting. It's complex as well. It's a lot more complex than you assume, which is why I guess a lot of people go with agencies.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there's, I presume it's like it's any industry. Of course, everyone can do stuff. You can do a lot yourself. But don't underestimate the burden of learning. Don't underestimate the reality of you don't know what you don't know, and don't underestimate the value of easy to say. Everything's easy to say. Not everything is as easy to do, because then you start looking at, well, there's issues of category naming conventions. What about if you've got an iron within clothes, but there's different levels of iron? So then how do you make sure that, for example, an issue that we had recently talking about the e-commerce space is that there was a company we worked with and they were selling jackets, and they had a yellow jacket that was outranking all of the other jackets that they had, and people were finding that singular product page instead of their category page. And this is the problem, that they were like, fuck, people keep finding our category. People find it's like we sell more than fucking yellow jackets. And they came to me at a stage where they'd done all of this restructuring stuff from a dev side, but the problem was the way that their URLs were set up, such that when Google was crawling, it didn't understand that the most important page is a category page rather than the actual individual color page of the jacket. So they were losing like a lot of money that was being left on the table because they were like, fuck, what are we doing? They started spending money on development. They had the initial change in they had the initial idea that, okay, we need to change maybe some of the URL conventions, but then they didn't wait for indexing because Google needs time to see that change. And then they changed something else again whilst they were waiting, saying, oh, we made this change, it didn't work. So that change must be wrong. So now we need to go back to our developers. And they'd spent about $3,000 trying to solve this problem. And it was like, guys, this is an SEO thing. So there's like an example that people don't necessarily think about that is important, especially when you're a high traffic business. And that's again comes down to the issue of implementation and a granularity that I always think, the same as I do. I'm like, I'd rather pay someone that knows to do it rather than do it, either fuck it up myself and not realize that I fucked it up until I've left money on the table, or spend hours learning, which is great, but then you start missing other elements of your business and other things go wrong in other places. So as you said, it's all a balance. And I'm a great believer in, if you want your business to grow, pay for it, pay someone who's valuable, or by all means take on the burden of learning and implementation, knowing full well that if you can afford to drop balls in other places, then of course do it. So it's always a balance, I think.
So we're talking about sort of what can happen if it's not done right. So if we get SEO wrong, there are many different things we can do to get it wrong. What's the best case scenario? So what or how powerful can SEO be if it's used correctly?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there's sites that do SEO and nothing else that can dominate, right? I'm just trying to think. There's a couple of guys in the SEO space, like Brian Dean of Backlinko, who does nothing. Well, you can build a core structure. You can build your business solidly around search if you use it effectively enough. I'm trying to think of examples off the top of my head, but there'll be a couple of people in the SEO space, like Neil Patel built his business off the back of SEO. There's a couple of people like Shopify have done amazing things with SEO. They built like a lot of satellite sites around their core company because they looked at what the core problems that were preventing from someone taking a paid subscription with them. And one of the issues is that people struggle to find a business name. So they created an SEO, the whole site devoted to business names. It's actually owned by Shopify to help speed up that process to then get people to convert into paying customers. They also looked at, I think they have another site that helps with logo designs. But there's all these things that companies do to SEO their sites or to SEO, parts of that journey to really help hammer home, the sales. So there's definitely like, God, there's a shit ton of stuff that can be done. I presume, as with anything, how ninja do you want to be? How much are you thinking about the sales cycle? And that's kind of the part that's also for me important. Like, understand the actual entire journey of the customer, not just for your own business, but for the businesses that you work with. And that's where I think that when we focus too granularly, sometimes, like, think about the whole buying journey. Think about what it is that's preventing that person from spending money with you, for example. And if it's something if you can help them with that problem, then do it, because you're going to see you're going to see lots of value and all of this kind of stuff. So there's kind of lots of potential there if you really think about all of the actual factors of the sales cycle and how you could potentially help someone.
That's very true. I mean, and it sounds, the more we sort of talk about it, the more I listen. It seems so super complex. Is there a structure that any company can just start off with and think, okay, start this process, and what would it be? Like, how would you recommend it should look like?
Absolutely. So listen, guys, if you want to take the DIY approach, one solid thing that's important, I'd say, is if you're a toy company, if you sell car parts, if you offer services, if you're like an accounting agency, right? Have a look in Keyword Planner. Have a look at the most important search terms for your business, right? So think of just the first 5. Just keep it simple. Find the 5 search terms that you think equal money to your business. Have a look at what comes up on Google, right, in terms of like content or advice, and write one amazing piece of content. Spend 2 months on it, right? Write a 5,000, 10,000 word piece of content that's like the ultimate guide to X, the ultimate guide to DIY accounting, right? The ultimate guide to the ultimate Christmas wish list for children's toys, whatever it might be. create an amazing piece of content, right? With the images, with the, the links, and with the right references, and just make it extremely readable, right? As in fun to read, focus on the quality first, right? Once you have that piece of content ready, which is a little bit, get that content ready, then start reaching out to bloggers. Say, hey, would you like to link to my content? Saying, hey, Jessie, I noticed that you like writing about kids' toys. Hey, Jessie, I noticed that you're a mother or a female blogger or a fucking vlogger or whatever the fuck it is, and ask them to see if they'd be interested in linking back to your content. Month 1, writing. Month 2, 3, 4, getting links back to that piece of content. And you can build your whole business around a singular blog post. There's more companies I'm just trying to think of that built businesses around singular blog posts that have gone viral. I think there's a photo company, iStock Photos. I need to look it up, but they pivoted their whole company. They was doing something quite different, but they found that people, when they were trying to use their graphic design tool, were searching for stock images. So they built the ultimate guide to stock images, found loads of people started linking to it, and then built a stock images business. And they do 6-7 figures now, and they pivoted it based upon the basis of this viral, semi-viral blog post, where they found that this was an issue. So I'd say that if you're a business, think of your keywords, create an excellent piece of content, and apply the 80-20 rule. 20% writing, 80% reaching out.
Great. Horatio's principle. I love how you sneak that in there.
This is true. This is true.
And we're always talking now about video. So obviously we're doing this on video now, and the power of video to put things across. Could you do something similar, but with video content? Is that possible?
Yeah, sure. The mechanics are the same, in that you look at content or video content that's popular, right? And then you try and produce content to rank against it, or you produce content that's better than the content that already exists, right? SEO is complicated and also simple, right? It's a little bit like business. If you sell toys, you'll probably go into Toys R Us, or you go into Hamleys, or you go into Walmart, depending upon the niche and the vertical that you're targeting, right? Walmart versus Hamleys are completely different kinds of customer. But you look at your competitor and you think, right, how is it that what I do is better than what my competitors offer, to kind of make it a no-brainer for a potential prospect to come and want to buy toys from me, right? Yeah. We always think about this in business. The same shit applies with stuff online. So look at a piece of content they produce and think of it not as a blog post, think of it as a product teaser. Think of it as a product show reel. Think of it as, the sales pitch. When you begin changing your kind of language around it, then you'll begin to realize, oh wow, so this is a sales pitch. Let's have a look at their sales pitch. Okay, cool. How can I make my sales pitch, my video, my blog post, fucking way better than theirs, to the extent that if someone looked at them side by side, they'd be like, well, this one's way better than that one. And that's step 1 of absolutely everything that you do, right? Because you have to deliver the value. And then it's like, right, I've got this amazing toy that's way better than their toy. My toy is fucking waterproof. It's a rubber ducky that can stand underwater for 6 minutes. Theirs can only stand up for 3, and it starts leaking after an hour. Ours has got 3 hours of full fucking durability. Perfect. So I've got this amazing rubber ducky. Now I've got to go fucking tell everybody about it and be like, hey guys, look at my duck. The principle's the same. When you think of things like that, what often happens is people only think of outbound stuff in that way. They think, right, yeah, they're calling 10 people a day, I've got to call 20 people a day. But actually that same principle applies absolutely across the scale with every vertical that you try and dominate. So that's kind of the approach I think you should be taking as a business owner, with video as well, like you said.
So we're looking at some marketing and sales in many respects combining. Marketing can actually bring in sales. It's not just going out there and having to drive them and spending all those hours calling, getting numbers, and the horrible cold calls that a lot of people know. Actually, there is an easier, can you say, way to do it?
Absolutely. So one of the things, like a popular term before, right? Okay, so the buying cycle is multi-touch now. People don't rarely look at a singular product page without doing any outside research. Even with penny products, I'd argue, even with a £3 product, you'll have maybe a quick look at the website. Less so with a penny product, but the journey is still multi-touch point. Okay, now for some reason people still find that surprising, and it's probably because of this idea of this whole millennial term, right? Millennials aren't fucking young people anymore. if you look up what millennials are, it's someone born from 1981 to 1996. If you're born in fucking 1981, then you're like 36 years old, 37 years old. This is fucking not a young person at all. These are the people.
Hey, don't disillusion me here. Come on.
But yeah, I agree. But they're not young.
Yeah, I understand.
And these are the people that are making buying decisions. You know, there are 35-year-old investment bankers. There's 35-year-old entrepreneurs worth millions. There's 35-year-old people that work at Tesco's as a cashier. All great, all meaningful jobs. And this is your consumer. This is the person who has the most purchasing parity of today. And that's me. That's you, because we both fall within that age range. And we both are comfortable with WhatsApp, with YouTube, with Google, with Skype as we're on, with whatever it might be. So when you think about like who the buying audience is, it does surprise me that people segment sales and marketing and see them as being like separate things.
Yeah.
Because for me, they're not. It's like, you know, everything, true success comes from brand loyalty, right? There are so many competitors for absolutely every service and absolutely everything. So you have to find a way to build loyalty. It's one of the reasons I want to do these fucking videos with you, right? I want people to care about Jessie, to think Jessie's a fucking cool person that interviews. You know, she's not bad to look at. Deepak's okay to look at, but he's fucking cool.
I do feel like I need a hat, though. I feel like I'm losing out on the hat game right now.
You know what? I did. I started wearing it because my hair was bad, but then I just got into the habit of wearing it. And then a couple of people were like, "Oh, Deepak, where's your hat today?" And I was like, "Oh fuck, I gotta start wearing my motherfucking hat." So even though I'm inside, it's quite warm. I've got the fucking heating on, right? Because I'm a sissy. It's like, oh fuck it, I'll wear my hat. Yeah, no. To answer your question, that I think that the only answer is personalization. The only answer is building loyalty, because you know, everybody's out there working, and the reason that I stay with the brands that I stay, alongside obviously the value, is that I begin to fall in love with the brand. And that you know, and I get the, you know, you've got to create the warm fuzzy feeling. It's an intangible, but it's real, and it carries equity. And this is something that comes from outside of the sales process directly, and you know, so I think that's, you know, a really key thing.
Brilliant. Well, look, what I want to do is next week I'm going to severely test you. We've had a really sort of good overview about, so we can do with SEO, about the market. But next week I want to look at the future. So I want things and trends that you're seeing. I know you're scared now, aren't you? So things that you're seeing that you know are going to impact people. And anyone out there who's watching this, send us some questions if you want anything answered. Send them, make them as difficult as possible. I want to make Deepak sweat, please, because he's still cold in his hat. And yeah, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, it's just cool. This is fun. I clearly can talk till the cows come home, as I've discovered. Well done you. Not well done you. Thank you for reeling me in and being like, right, this is good.
Super.
Cool.
Deepak, epic. That was really good fun.
So yes, thank you. You know what? I fucking forgot to stop record. Okay. Anyway, thank you, Jessie, so much. I'm going to keep this in.
Text me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to